Are you interested in investing in real estate, but you don't have the 20 to 25% down payment that's needed if you were to just strictly invest? Or maybe you've even dreamt about owning a house and being able to live for free in that house. Either way, I'm guessing you clicked on this video for a reason. I first got into real estate investing through house hacking my first house at 20 years old, and ever since I have been a massive advocate for house hacking. So in this video, I'm going to be covering what house hacking is, how you can house hack with your first house, where you should house hack, why you should consider house hacking, and if now is even a good time to house hack because of the high market prices. So let's get right into it with what is house hacking. And house hacking is a term I often use, but I've come to realize not everyone knows what house hacking is. So I'm going to put this in as simple as terms as possible. House hacking is simply using your primary residence to produce income. And the most common way of doing this is purchasing a small multifamily, 2 to 4 units, living in one of those units and then renting the remaining units. And that will, of course, help offset the cost of your actual mortgage, meaning you can almost live for free. But this isn't the only way of house hacking. You can really get creative with it. Again, all you have to do is use your primary residence to bring in income. So you can literally do whatever you want. Rent out bedrooms, rent out garage spaces, parking spaces. I've seen people rent out their pools. It's really whatever you think is valuable and you can actually rent out and it brings in money, that's considered house hacking. Now you're probably thinking, well, why should I even consider house hacking, right? And I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. When I bought my first house hack and actually became an investor, it was a life-changing event. Like, it literally was life-changing. And I don't mean that any subtle kind of way, because ever since 20 years old, so the past 5 years of my life, my housing payment has been $300 or less every month. Just imagine in your head how freeing that is. It's basically living for free in this expensive world, which everyone knows how expensive it is to survive. And of course, you're probably already thinking of the biggest objection I always hear to house hacking. Well, if I'm going to buy a house, I want the house for myself. I don't want to share my house. That's the reason I'm buying my own house, right? Well, my counter to this is, if this is your first house, chances are you're coming from a position where you were in a shared living space already. Whether that be living with your parents, whether that be living with roommates, having an apartment where you were like in a duplex type situation. You're already used to it. So why not just keep living as you were and sacrifice a little bit so that you can actually set yourself up for great success in your financial future. If you're getting value from this video, make sure to hit that like button. The long-term game is also super impactful when doing this, because guess what? After you have it, all you have to do is live in that house for at least a year. After that, guess what? As long as you own that property, it is always producing monthly revenue, meaning you're always going to have that rent coming in all the time. And that's not to mention when you're actually living at the property. Well, guess what? Even if you have to pay a few $100 like me, you're still saving so much more money than if you were having to pay, who knows, $1,500 to $2,000 of rent is usually what it is around New Hampshire. So instead of paying, let's say $1,800, you're paying $300. Well, guess what? Now you get to store away that $1,500 for your next down payment. And then you can literally use this while you're saving that money for your next down payment to just rinse and repeat. Go buy another house hack, do it again, acquire more rentals. Or if you're like, hey, I'm not trying to go that far with it, well then whatever. You can just literally have one, and then you take that savings that you just saved for a down payment, go buy your single family house, and then just be like, hey, now I at least have one income producing property that's bringing me cash flow every month, and now I'm living with my actual single family house. All you had to do was sacrifice for a year. And at this point, you're probably thinking, well, how can I do this right now? And is there any catch to doing this? And really, there is no catch doing it. Of course, everyone's going to have their own unique situation depending where you are. But if you're a first-time home buyer, being able to do this, you're allowed to actually take advantage of these low down payment loans. Like you could get into it with a 3.5% down FHA loan, or a 0% down VA loan if you're a veteran. Or if you just go the conventional route, you can still get into it with only 5% down. For example, when I was 20 years old, I used an FHA loan, which again, only requires 3.5% down. And at the time of closing, I only had to bring $5,020 out of pocket. Now, if I didn't do house hacking and I had to do that strictly as an investor with 25% down, that would have been close to $45,000. I don't know about you, but I don't know a bunch of 20-year-olds with $45,000 to put down on investment property. Oh, and I forgot, while you're at it, make sure to hit that subscribe button. So where should you do this? Because it matters, right? Now, I'm gonna be completely honest with you. It truly doesn't matter. If you're using it as your primary residence, the only thing you really have to make sure is that it makes sense with numbers and that after you move out, or of course when you're there, you can fill the units. You don't want to be sitting in somewhere that literally has no population and you can't fill a vacant unit, but there's not many places like that, especially right now in the country with the housing crisis. So really, wherever you're living, if you can find a multifamily property, the numbers make sense, then go for it. And it might not make the most sense if you were just like an investor strictly investing for the best profit possible, but again, this is the house hack, and this is so that you can actually get off on the right foot of owning a house, not having to be drowned in debt because you'd have to be paying the whole mortgage. You actually get to have help from the renter, and it's affordable. So now the last question, of course, is when is a good time to do it, or is now a good time despite how high prices are across the country? And this is going to be kind of the same advice that I just gave for the previous answer. It really doesn't matter. Any time is a good time to buy a house hack if the numbers make sense. And that's a very important if. The nice thing about real estate investing and why I'm such a fan of it is because it's a very simple thing. You run the numbers. If the numbers make sense and the numbers show that the property will cash flow, then it's a good purchase. It's very simple. Even if you're not the best with numbers, it's either you're showing this property makes negative cash flow or this property produces positive cash flow. If it's negative, it's not a good deal. Don't buy it. Doesn't matter what time it is. Doesn't matter what it is. You shouldn't be buying a negative thing. Now, some people will go against that because they invest in California or something and they want to really bank on having property values go up. But especially for house hacking your first property, I would advise against that and just strictly run the numbers. If they make sense, great time to invest. In house hacking, honestly, you might have heard of it before because it's becoming more and more popular, at least where I am and the people I talk to. It seems like something that more and more people actually want to get into. And I do believe this is the most powerful purchase that you can make in real estate investing because it's going to be the only time that you can actually get into this for this low of a down payment and actually be able to afford getting into your first investment, because everyone always says, I'm going to buy my single family and then I'll invest later in life. Why wouldn't you invest now? Buy the property, have the property let you live for almost free so you can save more money so then you can go buy your house. I just don't get the thought process. No offense to anyone who buys a starter house. I believe it's a complete waste of money because you're buying it with the thought, I'm going to sell this in a few years. What happens if the market tanks? Okay, like it just doesn't make sense. So why not get an investment property that makes sense with numbers? Doesn't matter what happens in the market as long as you can keep it rented. You're in great shape. So if you have any questions, make sure you drop them in the comments below and I'd be happy to help with those. And I'll catch you guys next week.